the aftermath of Pakistan's occupation. Pakistan's annexation unleashed a humanitarian crisis and entrenched instability. A once independent Balochistan, capable of fostering regional stability, was destabilized by British miscalculations and Pakistani aggression. Today, it endures as an occupied territory, a nation stripped of its natural wealth, a region denied political freedom, a site of rampant human rights abuses, a victim of gradual genocide. Occupation and resistance. Balochistan remains under occupation because its people have continuously resisted Pakistan's attempts to assert control over their land. Anthropological and political scholars note that sustained resistance against an occupier signals a nation's refusal to relinquish its identity and rights. This affirms Baloch's status as a distinct nation, though global powers, swayed by geopolitical interests, have ignored their obligations to uphold its sovereignty. Pakistan's failure to dominate Balochistan without resorting to violence perpetuates a cycle of repression and resistance. This deadlock stalls human development, claims countless lives, and traps a strategically vital region in perpetual conflict. Resource exploitation, a systematic plunder. The Baloch struggle transcends mere resource protection. It's a fight for exclusive control over their land and destiny. The Baloch demand a return not to the post-1948 status quo, but to the pre-November 13th, 1839 era, before British forces invaded and seized their homeland under the pretext of military necessity. Pakistan's exploitation of Balochistan's resources is methodical, employing both immediate grabs and long-term demographic engineering. The state has incentivized Punjabi dominance in federal institutions, encouraged non-local settlement in Baloch cities, and sidelined indigenous representation to entrench its grip. Gwadar Port, profits over people. The Gwadar Port Authority, established in 2002, exemplifies this exploitation. Despite its location in Balochistan, Baloch workers are systematically excluded from employment. The port generates significant revenue, yet profits flow profiting from narcotics trafficking, arms smuggling, and human trafficking. This illicit economy fuels addiction, strengthens criminal networks, and further erodes Baloch society, while contributing to the global spread of narcotics. Pakistan's refusal to entrust coastal security to Baloch forces reflects a deeply entrenched occupation mentality, focused on suppressing Baloch interests while maximizing resource extraction. Foreign collusion. Reco Dik and CPEC. Pakistan leverages Balochistan's wealth to woo foreign players, offering resources at bargain rates to prop up its faltering economy and create international complicity in the plunder. The Reko Diq project in Chagai, home to one of the world's largest gold and copper reserves, saw companies like Chile's Antofagasta and Canada's Barrick Gold extract billions in resources. Between 2010 and 2020, an estimated 2 million ounces of gold and 20 million tons of copper were mined. Yet Baloch communities saw no schools, hospitals, or roads built in return. Mining has poisoned water supplies with heavy metals and turned fertile land barren, deepening local misery. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, linking Gwadar to China's Xinjiang via a $62 billion network of infrastructure, promises development but delivers displacement. Local fishermen, once reliant on Gwadar's waters, have been barred from their fishing grounds by security zones. Baloch labor constitutes less than 5% of CPEC's workforce, and families living near construction sites face forced evictions, often with compensation that fails to cover the costs of relocation or resettlement. The recent opening of Gwadar International Airport in 2024 underscores China's military ambitions, positioning the port as a potential naval outpost, a move that prioritizes Beijing's Arabian Sea access over Baloch welfare. Environmental devastation, resource exploitation has ravaged Balochistan's environment. Reko Diq's mining has contaminated aquifers with arsenic and cadmium, rendering them undrinkable. CPEC's construction has felled thousands of acres of scrub forest, disrupting ecosystems and displacing pastoralists. These projects, cloaked as progress, leave behind a wasteland where Baloch communities once thrived. Deprivation of political freedom. Political agency is the bedrock of equitable development, shielding communities from predatory exploitation. Pakistan, however, brands Baloch nationalism as terrorism to justify repression. Organizations like the Baloch National Movement, BNM, Baloch Republican Party, BRP, and Baloch Students Organization, BSO, pursue peaceful advocacy but face brutal crackdowns. Leaders assassinated, activists disappeared. Puppet regimes, such as that of Sarfaraz Bhutto, a documented death squad leader installed as Balochistan's chief minister, ensure local voices are silenced. Human rights violations, enforced disappearances have scarred nearly every Baloch family. Over 20,000 people have been forcibly disappeared since the year 2000. Many later found in mass graves or as mutilated corpses. This terror campaign aims to crush dissent and erase Baloch identity. Gradual genocide, Pakistan's strategy, resource theft, demographic manipulation, and targeted killings amounts to a slow-motion genocide. By stripping the Baloch of land, rights, and representation, the state seeks to obliterate their nationhood and impose a fabricated Pakistani identity. For the past 77 years, since the Baloch national flag was lowered in the capital of a free Balochistan on March 27, 1948, the Baloch nation has endured these consequences. This suffering will persist unless the situation changes. Let us stand in solidarity with the Baloch nation's struggle and help transform this unique and beautiful corner of our world into a symbol of peace.
Thank you. What we have just witnessed, it is, I would say, a tip of the iceberg that is happening in Balochistan. And I do really want to apologize for the graphic images you have seen, but that is the harsh reality of Balochistan. This is what people are enduring in Balochistan on a daily basis. The documentary which we presented, that was not just a video, but it has emotion. It has people who have suffered, families that have suffered, mineral resource rich area where minerals are being taken without the consent of the people, and they are living a miserable life. In this very conference hall, we have number of people, including myself, who are the victim of Pakistani state violation one way or other. To continue with the conference, Balochistan, obviously, what you have seen here has been witnessing these genocide from the last 7 decades. But along with Balochistan, the brother state, as we call them, the historical relation which we share with them, the Sindhi nation, they have also been suffering at the hands of the Pakistani state, and their land is also being violated. The people in Sindh are also being abducted. So to give a talk on that and to share the story of the Sindh with us, now I would like to invite a friend of Balochistan, a brother, I would say, nation for us, the leader of the World Sindhi Congress, General Secretary of World Sindhi Congress, Dr. Lakhu Lohana. He has been campaigning for a free Sindhu Desh for decades and has actively been a strong supporter of the Baloch national struggle. Dr. Lakhu Lohana.
Dear friends, first and foremost, I congratulate Baloch National Movement to hold this conference at a very critical time. Though the time for us, the oppressed nations, since last almost 8 decades have never been good. But our struggle is entering into a phase where, as a result of the heroic struggle and the suffering and the pain and the genocide that we all went through, is resulting in the state, because we have been crying for long. Because, as Hakim said, this is the day, the 27th March, when Pakistan's forces forcibly, against the international law, annexed and occupied Balochistan. And because the title is Occupation of Land and Exploitation of Resources. If you look at the history always, the powerful nations, the greedy nations, the fascist nations, they try to occupy the lands. And what is the purpose? Purpose is to exploit the resources, to capture the resources, to capture the lands. And people, for their survival, they have to survive, they will fight back. And the method that these occupation forces they use is ruthless force. And that has been happening. But as a result of the heroic struggle of occupied nations, the state of Pakistan is becoming more and more and more exposed the true nature in front of the international community. Now, the situation is, as Hakeem was saying, that there were some images that were horrific. But you cannot understand. There's no comparison, no words, no documentaries, no images are incapable to reflect the pain of that mother who lost her son and only see her in her dreams. You cannot, I mean, it is impossible to reflect the pain of these wives, of these mothers, of these sisters, of these brothers, of friends and families. It's not possible. The dark night goes on. Our lands are occupied. Our resources are snatched. Say in Balochistan, one of the richest part, we just the gold mines of Rekodik. If you distribute that among the people of Balochistan, everyone will get $1 million. And what they are getting? They are getting hunger, poverty, poisonous water to drink, living in medieval times. And that is happening in Sindh as well. Sindh, that produces, according to the official figures, 72% of gas of Pakistan, 56% of oil of Pakistan, 6th largest gold deposit in the world. Now, they are already occupied these. So say, for example, the largest gas field in Pakistan, Gwadar, the people who live in the neighboring villages, they still use wood to cook their meals. So they've already taken that. But as if that was not enough for them, they have started occupying lands in wholesale, millions of acres. Why? Because army needs to corporate farming. Army needed to sell and lease it to foreign investors because they are running out of money. And as a last resort, they are murdering, they are killing the source on which Sindh, that is our lifeline, that on which Sindh got its name, and that's Indus River. The longest river of South Asia is dry. 92% of delta is finished. And the Sindhi people, literally, not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, millions of Sindhi, children, women, old people, professionals, human rights activists, political parties, they are in this state. But as someone said, the fascists, they cannot be appeased. The fascists, they cannot be argumented. They only can be defeated. So for us, it is either we live or we don't live. That is the situation for all the occupied nations. They are not, it is still a genocide. I would differ. It is a very, very active genocide taking place in Balochistan, taking place in Pashtunistan, taking place in Sindh in different ways. And to carry on their genocide, they are crushing every voice. What Mar and Baloch was saying, what was she doing? She said, don't abduct my people. And that was what Lord was saying, don't take my people. And they killed her husband, father. And what they have done with this peaceful protest to Mar and Saniti, all of these people. So for us, we are entering into a phase where our struggle is entering into a decisive phase. They will use various techniques. Their ruthlessness, say for example, even in your lifetimes, in the last few years, see how the ruthlessness, the operation, atrocities and violence perpetrated by state of Pakistan has increased. I'm sorry to say, as our struggle increases, this will increase further. They will use various ways. They will develop their narratives, whole that we will come to it, we'll come out of it. Unity is a buzzword which we always use. But things don't happen just by saying. Until unless systematic, strategic, brainstorming goes in. We have to really, of course here we can talk briefly, but we have to sit regularly to understand enemy's strategies, how enemy creates their narratives, how to foster our unity that is visible. We have to work on it. And we all are fortunate that we are in the struggle of survival of our nations, and I've got every hope we will survive. We will come out of it. The occupation will end, and I now can see it. Long live Balochistan, long live Pashtunistan, long live.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lakhu Lohana, for not just giving an idea of what is happening in Sindhu Desh and Balochistan, also reminding us of the strategies of our enemy and how this unity, this united front, or this brotherhood of nations who are suffering by the common enemy can work better. Dr. Lakhu mentioned Marang Baloch, Samidin, Sorat Lohar, and there are many more. They younger generation of Balochistan and Sindh, and of course in Pashtunistan we have Manzoor Pashtun, again, who is a very young leader. These people are there to encourage us. These people are there to give us strength and to carry out this struggle ahead. So, going forward, and then Balochistan again is a case, is an area where everyone is one way or other victimized by the state operation. And we are lucky as a nation that even though most of the Pakistani state, its judiciary, its media is running by the Pakistani state, and they are forwarding the agenda of the Pakistani state, which is against the oppressed nation. So the next speech which we are going to present, it's a recorded one, which is sent by an advocate who is, I would say, again, a friend of Baloch, especially working on the cases of the enforced disappearances. Iman Mazari, she is a human rights lawyer and woman human rights defender. She has been active in supporting victims of violence and persecution to seek legal redress. She is a vocal advocate for the rights of persecuted religious and ethnic communities and against human rights violations and abuse, especially by the Pakistani military and security forces. And because of her activism, we have seen many times she has been behind the bars. She has been put behind the bars, Pakistani state, to pressurize her, to to silence her voice. But she has been a strong voice, a hope for the people, for the families of the abducted Baloch students, that someone is there to raise their voice. Now I would like to call Niyaz to please come and start the video.
Hello and assalamu alaikum to everyone. First, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the Baloch National Movement, in particular Dr. Baloch, for giving me the opportunity to share my Hello and assalamu alaikum to everyone. First, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the Baloch National Movement, in particular Dr. Baloch, for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you today on the topic for which this conference is being held. I'll just speak very briefly because I firmly believe that the most important opinions to hear on this topic are from those persons who are the affected community, which is the Baloch people. My opinion on this topic will specifically focus on the exploitation of resources by Pakistan and by China against the will of the Baloch people, what that means for the right to self-determination, and the impact of that on Pakistan's international human rights commitments, which particularly are tied to the GSP plus status that has been given to Pakistan as well. So briefly speaking, the idea, and I've talked about this before at the last conference, that there's a concept of external self-determination and internal self-determination, and unfortunately, Pakistan, vis-a-vis even the concept of internal self-determination of the Baloch people, is not willing to recognize their right over their natural resources, their right over their land, being the indigenous local community from there, which has a right to determine how it shapes its future, how it utilizes its resources. And in this regard, what you hear in Pakistan very often is, CPEC is going to bring development to Balochistan, and all these people, these mothers who are protesting against enforced disappearances and extrajudicial executions are just trying to deprive Balochistan of development, but there could be nothing further from the truth, because every time, and of course the Baloch people will be able to better speak on this from their own experiences, but any time that the concept of development, or that promises of development have been made to the Baloch people, that development has never taken place for the people. And what that's resulted in is, for example, what you see in Gwadar today, where local fishermen are deprived of accessing the sea, deprived of their right to livelihood, and gated communities are being made, entire areas are being made no-go areas for the Baloch people. And this sort of policy of the state of Pakistan is very unfortunate when you see China also becoming a party to it, and perhaps not understanding the dynamics in Balochistan, the history of Balochistan. And one of the reasons why this becomes particularly problematic is because we've seen in certain areas, like for example, if you take the example of the Niger Delta, where you've had like companies, international companies, oil companies, becoming involved in areas which are conflict zones, that conflict actually exacerbates, and then those companies or those countries which are liaising with the home country or trying to develop that region, they become parties to very serious human rights violations of the local communities. And this is something that we're seeing in Balochistan as well. In conclusion, I'll just emphasize that these rights violations are in glaring contradiction to the human rights obligations that Pakistan has undertaken. Most significantly, Common Article 1 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which provides for the right to self-determination. And because not just these two conventions, but all other conventions to which Pakistan is a party, including, I believe it's 7 out of 9 core human rights conventions, which also includes the Convention Against Torture, which of course in essence also prohibits enforced disappearances because that is a form of torture. We are violating our obligations under those conventions, and compliance with what those conventions stipulate as obligations for member states. Non-compliance with that can lead to a deprivation of our GSP plus status. And I do believe that the European Union needs to take this up as an issue with Pakistan, because the human rights violations in Balochistan are increasing day by day. Between January and March 2025, we've seen a significant increase in enforced disappearances. We were submitting a list before the Islamabad High Court on the last date of hearing in a larger bench on missing persons cases, but that bench was dissolved because one member, who interestingly belongs to Balochistan but recused himself from the hearing. We were submitting a list there which showed around 250 people just in these last 3 months who have been abducted, and these are very conservative estimates. These are those cases which I verified, which our team verified through more than one source, but in actuality those figures are much greater, even just for the last 3 months. So as long as these enforced disappearances and extrajudicial executions persist, and Baloch people are not given a right over their resources and over their land, the conflict is just going to continue to get worse. And any other country that gets further involved in it will also unfortunately have to face the repercussions in the way that the state of Pakistan is facing them, because you cannot resolve a conflict by perpetuating an occupation. So thank you very much for giving me the time to share my thoughts today.
Mazari, an advocate, someone who works within the framework available in the state of Pakistan, the judicial framework. The numbers she mentioned, she spoke about a lot of the things, but they are the facts I want to pick up is the number of abductions from January to March counts 250, which she could verify from multiple sources. And only in last week or so, there have been a countless number of people have been abducted across Balochistan, in Karachi and other parts. So the worst violations that Pakistan state could commit in Balochistan, they are carrying it out, and this is the state where we live, our people live on a daily basis. So continuing with the conference, the next speaker we have is someone who represents an oppressed nation in Pakistan. We have Dr. Saeed Alam Masood, who is a children's surgeon, researcher, and analyst. He's a political activist, founding member of Pashtun Tahfuz Movement and United Afghan Front. Dr. Said Alam Masood.
Thank you very much. I'm not used to have a written speech. I'm an extempore speaker, but today I was asked to present a written presentation. Exploitation of resources and genocide of Baloch and Pashtuns in Pakistan. Mr. Chairman, BNM, esteemed members of BNM, respected members of among the speakers, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Syed Alam Shah, also known as Dr. Syed Alam Masood. I am deeply grateful for the invitation, and it's great honor to be here with you today. I represent the United Afghan Front, a research-based organization of Larobar Afghan diaspora. The UAF is committed to working closely with BNM in our shared struggle for rights and recognition of respective communities. Ladies and gentlemen, Sindhi, Saraiki, Baloch, Kashmiri, Gilgit-Baltistani, Pashtun communities in Pakistan have historically faced various forms of marginalization and discrimination in Pakistan. However, the experience of Baloch and Pashtun peoples in particular share notable similarities. That's why if I mention it, my Sindhi friends should not mind it. Both Pashtun and Baloch communities have historically been excluded from the central power structure of Pakistan. Similar to other ethnic groups, including Bengalis, Sindhis, Saraikis, their resources have always been exploited and their cultural and political aspirations overlooked. Exploitation of resources. Let's examine the parallel in exploitation of resources affecting both Pashtun and Baloch communities in Pakistan. To save your time, actually, exploitation of resources, its impact on socio-economic livelihood, and genocide are three oceans. And to save your time, I am combining three oceans, encapsulating three oceans in one draft. Gas. The gas in Pakistan is called Sui gas because the country's first and largest natural gas reserve was discovered in Sui region of Balochistan in 1952 and has been utilized ever since. This gas was supplied to Punjab and major cities of Sindh and the capital of Pakhtunkhwa as well, well before Balochistan. The provincial capital of Balochistan, Quetta, received its first gas connection in 1983. 30 years after, we all had enjoyed it. As of today, only 14 districts out of 34 districts in Balochistan have access to sweet gas. Even in these areas, severe load shedding, low pressure make it barely usable. Despite being the province that produced the gas, Balochistan currently consumes 2.81% of the total gas utilized in Pakistan. The federal government has failed to pay the long-standing dues of this valuable resource and refuses to update its rates. Instead of supporting the gas-producing region, subsidies are provided to the consumers. And of course, consumers are not. Coal and copper. Just mentioning briefly, Balochistan is endowed with rich mineral resource, notably significant deposits of gold and minerals, gold and copper. Located near Sendek town in Chagai district, the Sendek gold project was constructed by a metallurgical construction company of China and got completed in 1995. A successful trial run produced 150,000 tons of blister copper from sending. The ownership structure at 2017 was the government of Balochistan was supposed to get 35% share, federal government 15%, and Chinese company 50%. Then it got changed. 50% went to China, 48% to the Federation of Pakistan, 2% to Balochistan. And then it changed. How? In February 2023, the Sandek Metals Limited paid total sum of rupees 2.59 billion rupees to Balochistan government from the project proceeds, madam. Just imagine. 2.59 billion rupees out of 150,000 tons of copper to Balochistan. Recorded. One of the largest developed and undeveloped copper gold project in the world. The story is the same. The provincial government has no say whatsoever in this whole project. Now, just compare the gold and copper project of Waziristan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Pashtun land is also rich in various natural resources, including hydropower, oil, gas, uranium, coal, chromite, marble, emeralds, and other precious stones. In North Waziristan, Muhammad Khail region, copper mining project was initiated in 2015 by whom? By Frontier Works Organization, an organization of Pakistan Army, in collaboration with China. And how much copper was extracted? 11,000 tons of copper per day. Till date, not a single penny has been paid to the promisor to Waziristan. Tobacco, just to mention one thing. Pakhtunkhwa produces 95% of the flue-cured Virginia tobacco, which is used to manufacture costly cigarettes. On the website of Pakistan Tobacco Corporation, you all can see even today, the chairman of corporation states that tobacco generates more revenue annually in the form of GST, sales tax, and fees than what IMF give to Pakistan. Tobacco alone. But do you know what happened? Tobacco is not a crop in Pakistan. When it becomes a crop, these taxes will go to the province. When it's not a crop, it is in the form of a commerce, so everything goes to the federal government. Energy surplus promise. I have assimilated all the things. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is the energy surplus promise of Pakistan. It produces 3 times more electricity than what we need. Its gas, petrol, diesel, kerosene oil production is much more than what we need. At least 2 or 3 times more than what we need. But the promise has no say whatsoever in either of this. Uranium, let me mention the uranium, please. Uranium is found in Lakhu Lohana district and Karak, 2 districts of Pakhtunkhwa, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. No one can question the worth of uranium, a precious resource of Pashtun, because it is considered a security issue. So it's a security issue, you cannot ask about uranium. So they will keep on digging, When it was uncovered, when it was covered by the land, by the earth, nobody was facing radiations. When it was got uncovered, the local people started suffering cancer. So cancer for us and uranium for them. So what was, just briefly mentioning, what was its impact on socioeconomic parameters? Pashtunkhwa. Exploitation of these resources depicted in socioeconomic indicators of the premise, approximately 49% of population live below poverty line in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. 49% people below poverty line. Uneducated, 44.9% are uneducated. Around 11.23 million people of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa live in Punjab and Sindh for meager job opportunities. This population is more than population of 50 countries of United Nations. And more than equal that population we are living somewhere else. What's the situation of Balochistan? More disgusting. 70% of the people live below poverty line in Balochistan. 49% in Pakhtunkhwa, 70% in Balochistan. This is 2023 statistics. 1.8 million children are not attending school in Balochistan. 1.8 million children. 5,000 schools of Balochistan are just one room. Just one room. Yearly death rate in Pakistan is 278 per 100,000 population. 278 per 100,000 population. While in Balochistan, it is 785 per 100,000 population. 15% of the people of Balochistan are suffering from hepatitis B and C. 3 times higher percentage than the rest of the country. Genocide of Pashtun and Baloch. Despite of plundering resources and depriving them of education and employment, the state itself is carrying out genocide of Baloch and Pashtuns. Pashtuns and Baloch have been facing genocide in Pakistan for decades. The genocide of Pashtun and Baloch meets the criteria outlined in 1948 UN Convention on Genocide. So what the UN Convention on Genocide states? Article 2 of the UN Convention on Genocide states that genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, racial, ethnical, or religious group, any of the following. So number 1, killing members of the group. So we are being killed on daily basis. Or causing seriously body or mental harm to the members of the group. Or deliberately inflicting on the group of conditions and the group conditions of life calculated to bring its physical destruction in whole or in part. So either of these 3, if happens, you are the victim of genocide. And Pashtun and Baloch fulfill 3 out of 3. 100% genocide. So what's the modus operandi of genocide? Somebody mentioned, many people mentioned. The method of carrying out genocide of Pashtun and Baloch in Pakistan is, number 1, through military operations. They say that we are conducting military operation in Waziristan or in Turgut to deal with the separatists, for example, or the terrorists. The religious terrorists are no one other than the proxies of the army. They are not killing them. They give them a safe passage and they kill us. And what they do in Balochistan. In Balochistan, whatever they want, whatever number they want, whosoever they want, they will say that we killed. For example, if God forbid 100 Baloch are killed, they will say all the 100 Baloch were terrorists. So, name of operation means genocide of Pashtun and Baloch. Second was raids. They are searching terrorists in Balochistan, in a village, in a home in Balochistan, or in Waziristan, in Pakhtunkhwa, anywhere in Pakhtunkhwa, and they kill as many people as possible in labeling and dub them as terrorists. 3. Through target killers, very rightly mentioned, Sarfaraz book 3 is the target killer, the gang target killer. And there were so many other in Balochistan, and same is about Pakhtunkhwa. In Pakhtunkhwa, the TTP by itself is the proxy of the state. They kill us on the will and wish and dictate of the state. And there are some professionals through whom they kill us. Target killing is part of genocide. And Baloch and Pashtuns are targeting Sindhi as well, of course. But since I was discussing the parallel between the two nations, that's why I mentioned. Third, extrajudicial killing. My God. The whole history is full of extrajudicial killing. This is 4. 5th, enforced disappearances. You can find the data from Human Rights Watch, for Amnesty International, European Parliament, PTM, BNM, Baloch Executive Committee. I mean, their data is available. I simply, just to save your time, I simply want to depict a disappearance case of a Baloch. Just listen. After forcibly disappearing Baloch individuals, their mutilated bodies are dumped in fields, streets, or roads. The mothers and sisters of missing persons rush together around these disfigured corpses, weeping and crying out, "Do not give us justice. Don't tell us who killed us. Just tell us what's the name of this disfigured dead body, so that we come to know whose brother or whose son he is or he was." This is the situation of enforced disappearances, killing through enforced disappearances. And lastly, just briefly mentioning the persecution, not prosecution. The whole story of persecution of both Baloch and Pashtun is full of persecutions. For example, the Baloch Jahti and PTM, I have been in prison 3 times, 4 times. I was on the hit list of Pakistan Army as well, still in the hit list. But just imagine, arrest of Nahran Baloch, Ali Wazir, Samidin Baloch, Haji Samad, Bebo Baloch, Malik Nasir, Kuki Khail. What are the charges? What's the case? They're consistently persecuting us. They want to silence us. But why we unify and we say, we will not keep quiet. We will not tolerate you. We will fight you out till we achieve our ultimate goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As Dr. Said Alam Masood mentioned, we will continue to struggle until we achieve our ultimate goal. The struggle will continue until the operation is there. To continue, I am going to present a recorded speech which was sent from Balochistan. This is the speech of Mir Muhammad Ali Talpur. Mir Muhammad Ali Talpur is a well-respected Baloch veteran political figure and a columnist. He has been active in Baloch national struggle since 1970s, and he has been writing about Balochistan, about the genocide of Balochistan from a very long time. He has been his article has been published in many of the Pakistani outlets as well. So just before we play the video, I just want to give a as Mir Muhammad Ali Talpur recorded his video before the current situation, the current escalation which is taking place in Balochistan. So he has kindly requested us to mention this, that this video was recorded on the 20th of March before the arrest of Dr. Marang Baloch, Samidin Baloch. So that's, and we're just going to play the video now. Yeah.
Dear and respected friends, today we assemble to commemorate the 27th March, the day that Pakistan gave up the rights and the land of Baloch Nation in 1948. We Baloch observe this day not as an act of crime or displacement, but as the reiteration of determination resolved to be the masters of a land and faith. We will not allow anyone, be it local or an international bully, to keep us enslaved. We Baloch want to live a life of dignity in a land free of exploiters and usurpers. The 77 years of life under yoke have been difficult and burdensome for the Baloch nation. And despite the overwhelming words of enemies' material superiority, aided by one international bully or the other, Baloch have resisted and continue to resist and have the will and determination to continue to victory. Repression of a dignified nation naturally gives birth to the unconquerable and resilient spirit in the people who, despite brutalities of state, refused to surrender their rights. To exploit resources of a nation or a country, the primary condition for the exploiters is to have an unhindered and danger-free access to the resources. This can only happen either in terra nullis, that is empty land, or with an unresisting population. Balochistan is neither terra nullis nor a Baloch docile nation. The Baloch nation has always historically resisted the systematic erasure and exploitation attempts with consistent courage and resilience, thus making it difficult for past colonialists and now for Pakistan and its allies like China to have the luxury of looting of Baloch resources with impunity, and thus in retribution are being brazenly repressed and brutalized. The use of brute force by Pakistan with support of its allies, China, US, and plus many more, for achieving their sinister and evil aims of exploitation of Baloch resources has been met with courageous resistance and resilience by the Baloch nation on all fronts, and the Baloch have been able to thwart the implementation of the evil aims and designs in Balochistan. The Baloch nation has since March 27, 1948, resisted the Pakistan's systematic policy of depriving the Baloch nation of their right to freedom, which was usurped that day, and its continuing consistent attempt at cultural, economic, historical, and now physical erasure. The attempt at physical and cultural erasure, economic and political disenfranchisement and dehumanization have failed because for a Baloch, the desire for a life of dignity and freedom has priority over everything else. Without the brave resistance of the Baloch nation under the leadership of icons like Nawab Noroz Khan, Babu Sher Muhammad Mari, Nawab Akbar Khan Bukti, and of course Nawab Khyber Khan Mari, the Baloch nation and the Baloch would have been swept aside, and exploiters would have had a free hand in their shameless exploiters to fatten on Baloch blood and resources. We should forever be thankful to them and to those sons of soil who have resisted and are resisting the multifaceted onslaughts on many fronts to bring Baloch nation to its knees. The hope that Baloch resolve and resistance can be defeated has been and will always remain a futile dream of the oppressors and exploiters. To understand what China's presence in Balochistan means for Balochian now and how very devastating it has been and will be, we have just to look closely at Gwadar. You will find that Gwadar represents not only the microcosm of Balochistan, but also epitomizes the pernicious role that China has played and will play to deprive Baloch of their rights and resources. It is here in Gwadar that the land has been grabbed, that the indigenous have been denied their right to livelihood, that the demography is being willfully changed, and that it is being militarized with a huge airport and a seaport that cannot be commercially viable. That there have been fencing and segregation of areas, plus the expressways designed in such a way that it not only denies access to the locals, but also ensures that whenever it rains, the old Gwadar is flooded so that people are forced to migrate, leaving the land for the Chinese and other migrants to occupy. All this, as we know, is being done with help of China under the notorious economic and physical occupation plan of Balochistan known as CPEC. However, despite their huge advances, the overwhelming security apparatuses and brutal responses, they have failed to break the spirit of Baloch people. And the Rajamuchi of the 28th July 2024 in Gwadar by the Baloch Jati Committee is the heartening example of people's determination and the will to resist physical, economic, cultural occupation and oppression in every place in Balochistan. The Baloch Corporation support for rights and resistance has come about because of the consistent and effective resistance by the politically and culturally conscious sections of our society to the ever-increasing and indiscriminate injustices of the frustrated in its designs to subdue Baloch nation, Pakistan has started viewing every Baloch as a potential insurgent because the Baloch nation's resistance of its 77 years of occupation has garnered the support of the majority of population for a life of dignity and freedom. Hence, all Baloch except the collaborators are considered enemies. In Balochistan, the state's acts of injustice and repression have been unrelenting and ever-increasing with the passage of time. The situation as it stands now is that since all Pakistani tactics and politics to deceive and suppress Baloch into submission have failed, the only tactic that is resorted to is that of indiscriminate and forced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, targeted killing. This on its own is a self-defeating policy, and it in turn is increasing the Baloch resistance and resilience to the state injustices and is stoking the desire for freedom of motherland. The Baloch discrimination cannot be broken somewhere. Though it is Balochistan that bears the ground of brutalities and injustices that are committed against people, sin and Pakhtunkhwa do not remain unsafe. We need to raise our voice for them as forcefully as we do for ourselves. Sin is being deprived of its right to live by privation of Indus waters from its fertile land to barren land of Balochistan and Punjab, due to which millions of people in Sindh will suffer. These making of canals should be resisted. The people of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa have suffered because of the so-called war on terror, and the people there are resisting it, and those resisting injustices are suppressed and incarcerated. Those resisting injustices there should have more support. Now, before I wind up my talk, I think I will be failing in my moral application for the support of oppressed people of the world if I do not talk about the ongoing Gaza genocide. The Gaza genocide is the clearest expression of the fact that the powerful enjoy a culture of impunity internationally and nationally. Otherwise, the killing of 60,000 Palestinians by bombing, thousands by disease and starvation, the deprivation of essentials like water, electricity, and shelter could not have gone unpunished and unchallenged in this unjust world. In a just world, expecting justice from an unjust world which we have for those who struggle and fight for their rights. But that should never mean that you give up your right for your rights. It only means that you struggle even harder and more wisely, because those who may seem invincible and not powerful today are shallow and hollow powers that not only will be defeated, but should be defeated. More power to the great Palestinians whose courage and resilience has exposed the supposed invincibility of Israel and its mentors. More power to those who are struggling and resisting oppression and exploitation for the last 37 years. More importantly, we should understand and resolve that after achieving justice for ourselves, it should be our duty to strive for a just world where genocide and oppression never happen. In the very end, I will read poem Invictus by Mir Muhammad Ali as a tribute to Baloch nation's resolve, determination, and the will to live a life of dignity and freedom. Invictus. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the frail clutch of circumstance, I have not benched nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond the place of wrath and tears looms but the horrors of the shade, and yet the menace of the years find and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. Long live the unity of oppressed people, long live the Baloch nation. We shall see.
This was Mir Muhammad Ali Talpur, whose whole life has been a struggle for the Baloch nation and for the oppressed nation. One can see in his eyes there was a lot of pain, sorrow, anger, dedication. In this audience, the Baloch sitting among us, we might be the third generation or the second generation after Mir Muhammad Ali Talpur joined the struggle and has been part of it. And now there's another generation that is leading from the forefront. So this shows the determination of Baloch people, that the struggle they are carrying out for a free, sovereign, independent country where they can live with peace in the region which is now facing brutalities that one cannot even imagine. Thank you. Continuing to the event, the next speaker we're going to call is one who dare to critique us, who is very blunt when there are things she wants to mention to us, when she wants to show her disagreement to us. But then again, she is the one where she sees injustice. She is very vocal, a brave voice. And I can say I'm proud to know her, proud to work with her, a friend of Balochistan, Dr. Ayesha Siddiqa. She is a senior fellow. She's a senior fellow at the Department of War Studies, King's College, London. She's the author of 2 books, including the renowned Military Inc. Inside Pakistan's Military Economy. Now the claps, please.
Thank you so much. Very grateful to BNM for inviting me. They're always very kind to get me involved in the conversation. Very, very grateful. Notable speakers before me, ladies and gentlemen. I watched the documentaries, I watched the speakers, I heard Mr. Fahim Baloch speak critically of the Pakistani state. And I was tempted to point out that I think there is one thing which he has, Mr. Fahim Baloch has completely missed. What do you do with someone with disability? I'm not asking you to forgive and forget, but to realize one thing, that the Pakistani state was born with a disability, blind and deaf. The Pakistani state, unfortunately, was born blind and deaf. It's a post-colonial state where the first leader, the founding father of that state, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, for him, provincialism, any mention of provincialism was base. He discouraged it. He didn't want people's provincial identities to be mentioned. And today, let me tell you, I mean, I am from Pakistan, and I always laugh that the state insists that every day I should reassure it or tell them of how great a Pakistani I am, and completely ignoring the other parts of my personality. You know, we are kind of born with multiple identities. I have a sectarian identity, I have a communal identity, I have a family, I have an ethnic identity. You know, one day you'll ask me, I'll tell you I introduce myself as a Saraiki. Maybe the next day you ask me who I am, I'll introduce my family. A third day, and I keep telling the Pakistanis that, look, the day you want me to be, when there's a need to be a Pakistani, I'll be a Pakistani. But don't force me to reassure you of who I am. And as a result, over 50 years of my life, the fun of being a Pakistani has completely evaporated. Because the state is so blind and deaf to who I am that it has pushed away the rest of me. It wants me to ignore the very essential rest of me. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. See, Pakistan was born as a bureaucratic polity. It was never born as a political state. And it carries that burden on its shoulder. It has carried this burden on its shoulder for the last 76 years. It cannot identify anything else. It cannot equate, it cannot see anything else. It cannot sympathize with anything else. So when the Baloch rise, or when my own people, the Saraikis, say something, Baloch are either asking for autonomy, right over their resources, right over opportunities which they deserve. Some Baloch don't want to be part of Pakistan. I'm from the Saraiki was said, well, we're not even asking for that. All we want is a separate province, which goes with our identity. And even that they consider harmful. So leave alone a Baloch who's asking for more, who's asking for, or a Pashtun who's asking for more. I mean, that completely kills them. So it's blind and deaf to identities of people, to needs of people. And like a colonial, post-colonial state, it's, Dr. Syed Alam Masood was talking about the treatment, and I completely agree with him. the Baloch and the Pashtuns have been treated very roughly, very badly for a very long time. Interestingly, and before I go to my next argument, started off 1947-48. I mean, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who incidentally was also a lawyer for the Khan of Kalar. He was also a lawyer for the Nawab of Bahawalpur. When the opportunity came, I mean, Bahawalpur was technically, if you look at Punjab, today's Punjab, one of the largest kind of regions is what was formerly the state of Bahawalpur. Yet Bahawalpur was absorbed very comfortably. There wasn't that kind of resistance. But in case of Kala, forces were sent and a state consolidated. And then onwards, the problem is that like the British colonial military, it has looked at these regions as borderland, which are essential military strategically, but not in terms of its human value. There are resources to be extracted. There is a strategy for decades. Pakistan has made an effort to become a frontline state for the United States. And what gave it that position? It just always wanted to be aligned with the United States, with the West. And for that, Afghanistan was significant. So all these borderlands would become significant every now and then. So when you're fighting for the Americans, now helping the Chinese, then these borderlands would become important. Then you recruit people. Then you transform their society. Pashtuns were so peaceful, conservative, peaceful. Suddenly, you do a social political transformation. Bring Taliban, bring Mujahideen, and make them part of that culture. So that scientific re-engineering, socio-political re-engineering, that has happened because you needed them. You needed them militarily. Militarily, then Pakistan would become aligned with whoever it was fighting for. There is a big joke which I saw, which was, I have an army, give me a war. And so the problem is that this military, which is fundamentally one of the large bureaucratic institutions which runs Pakistan, the problem with this military is that it has always been a mercenary military. The only transformation that happened under the British was that they kind of altered that mercenary element in their nature, in their psyche, by linking it with the regiment. So there is honor of the regiment. They never fought for the king or the queen when they were part of the British army. They fought for the regiment. But these were, the nature remained mercenary. And today, these borderlands are essential for this bureaucratic mercenary military because it brings money. I mean, today, one of the richest military postings is to Quetta, to Balochistan. You go to IG, you become IGFC, you become part of the institution, you go to co-command Quetta. So much money to be made. Smuggling, harassment. I mean, that's where money is to be made, and that's how it's done. People before me have talked about Gwadar, and it's interesting that I would also like to point out that it's interesting that why Pakistan, I think, is not going to let go of Balochistan. This misery of your people and of Balochistan will continue, primarily because it's an essential borderland with resources that the Pakistani state in Rawalpindi. It's not a state with the hub in Islamabad, but in Rawalpindi, can market to different international actors. We've been critical of China, but you speak to China and they're even fooling the Chinese. I mean, General Bajwa came to London in 2019 and where he spoke at International Institute of Strategic Studies, and where he said that give us money and weapons and we'll forget about China because we are genetically tied to the West. So they're ready to sell. And Balochistan and its resources are going to be of a lot of interest in international interest. I mean, in the tribal areas of KP and in Balochistan, you have lithium, you have copper, you have other reserves which attract international players. And therefore, that is something which they're constantly trying to sell to one to the other. Very recently, I think a couple of months ago, there was this Mr. Greenbeach who came from the United States, whose main activity was drilling. And so they're trying to kind of approach the Americans. They want to sell those resources. So if the Chinese are not there, the Americans will be there. And mind you, in the 1970s, the port of Gwadar, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had even offered it to the United States to develop. The Americans at that point in time were not interested. So, that didn't happen. But now, they're kind of juxtaposing one against the other. The Chinese are encouraged to stay, allowed to stay, whatever term you may use, in Gwadar, because that is something with which they attract the United States. That look, China will come in if you don't engage with us. So it's constantly a game that is being played. The other game, I think, which this bureaucratic state based in Rawalpindi is playing, is, trying to make itself relevant to Western powers, especially at the time when global politics is changing. And I think you in Balochistan, or you from Balochistan, when you look at what can be the future, I think it's important to measure and look at where global politics is going, especially with the change in Washington, D.C. Very little sympathy with human rights and, very kind of down to earth in terms of pragmatism. So what they look at is what their interests are. It's a very different United States. A United States, once upon a time, would at least listen, would at least speak. This one is different. And Iran, for example, is one of the issues on which the Pakistani military, is engaged with the Americans. It sees itself. Britain, again, is a country where the army chief keeps coming. They're very close. They keep engaging. And the primary reason being that the Pakistani military is there, is ready to fight a war, is ready to get paid for a conflict. And so the two conflicts that are essential at the moment for Europe is Ukraine. They've already made an offer The last time the army chief was here, very happy to be part of the key peacekeeping force in Ukraine, and also very happy to play a role in the Middle East. I mean, in case tension kind of goes up, Trump is kind of harder on Iran. Just watch. Pakistani military will be offering its services. If not kind of overt services, definitely covert services. Now, the reason I build all this up is that for this state, blind and deaf to the human needs, blind and deaf to human emotions, for whom people on the street do not matter. Now, for that state, what is going to be the reaction? Baloch are fighting and they're fighting hard, but the reaction is going to be harder. I mean, don't get mistaken. I was talking to a journalist from Sindh, a friend who covers both Sindh and Balochistan. I said, so what's the situation in Balochistan these days? And he was like, it's a 12-hour shift. I said, what do you mean? He says, 12 hours in the morning, you have the military, and after sunset, it's the militants. So governance is weak. And mind you, the state itself is at its weakest, the Pakistani state, because it has internal conflict. And I think what is benefiting the Baloch as well and creating, in a way, opening is that politically the state is very weak. It has killed with its own hands, throttled every single institution that could make Pakistan livable. Judiciary, political parties, civil bureaucracy, anything that could be killed has been killed. Now, and there is of course a pushback, in mainland Punjab, for example, where all the political battles happen, and what the battles that the state really cares about. So there is that battle going on, and therefore you find it at its weakest, and you find it that they can't even strategize how to deal with Balochistan, security situation in Balochistan. For them, it's a security situation, mind you, only, purely. Now, so that's why they're unable, and shortage of resources. They don't have the money. But they're finding other means to try to deal with the security situation. And I think the two actors which are very important for the Pakistani government at this point in time, UAE, Saudi Arabia, from where they're trying to find resources to fight the insurgency, and secondly, wherever they can get help from, United States. I think a fourth factor, a fourth country which is very important as far as future of Balochistan or future of insurgency is concerned is Afghanistan. They're trying very hard at the moment to reach out to the Taliban, mend the differences. And I think once those differences are settled, they would use harsher methods vis-a-vis the Baloch. And that is something the Pashtun angle or the Afghanistan angle of and its impact on Baloch insurgency should not be underestimated. One final point, I've gone on for long. One final point at this juncture. You see, when you look at insurgencies, the future of insurgencies, and you look at insurgencies in South Asia, there have been three critical insurgencies historically. The Kashmir insurgency in in India, the Tamil insurgency, LTTE, in Sri Lanka, and thirdly, the Baloch insurgency. So, what happened to the Kashmir insurgency? In Kashmir, insurgency was continuing until, the international community got fed up with the Islamism and the religious extremism it was creating, and after 2012, when American policy towards India changed, Pakistan got a pushback. Second, the LTT. LTT was they built a great insurgency, really pushed back. They had their own army, navy, air force, small segments. And they brought the Sri Lankan state to a point at its weakest when, it was ready to negotiate autonomy and recognize. And they made the mistake of killing Rajiv Gandhi, which completely changed the attitude. And once international actors are not on your side, there's a problem. See, what I would, and then you have the insurgency, which is just picked up. I mean, when it has begun to be noticed, but not sufficiently noticed. The recent attack, on Jafar Express, it was mentioned internationally, but not covered that extensively. And part of the reason was that there was such a media blackout. We didn't know where the story was. Pakistan doesn't want Balochistan to be covered. One has become conscious that in the last 3.5 years, BLA's capacity has grown tremendously. I mean, and it has grown broadly in the last 10 years. I mean, from a time when it could only acquire soft targets to 3.5 years when they can actually acquire hard targets, military targets. Just a couple of points, final points that I'd make. I think, firstly, the Baloch, the BNM and others who think about the future of Balochistan have to really think about reaching out to people within and without. There is a world that you need to communicate with, but there is also a world that you need to communicate with inside. Especially this either political movement or insurgency ain't going anywhere if you don't have that internal dialogue. An essential internal dialogue with the Pashtuns and essential internal dialogue with your own people, bridging the divide with the Hazaras, with the Barohis, and also people who are on the outskirts. I mean, we the Saraikis are very sympathetic to you because a couple of our central regions like DG Khan, Tausa are also population-wise there are a lot of Baloch there. In fact, when Marang Baloch came to Tausa, the kind of welcome she received was just phenomenal. And yet, we have a problem when Saraikis get killed. There is a dialogue that you need to have with us. We're not enemies. You have to find domestic friends as well. Don't push us away like that. That's one point. The other thing is that, look, the emphasis of your political movement and even the insurgency has, I mean, what's the emphasis? It's to bring the Pakistani state to a dialogue, right? I mean, it's either leave us alone, we go our separate ways. Even that requires a dialogue, and or that give us autonomy and a pre-1947 situation, because prior to 1947, the arrangement with the British was that communication, currency, and foreign relations, Balochistan was kind of recognized as independent, but with these three issues being managed by the British state, British authority, colonial state. Now, whatever dialogue, that requires a dialogue. And for that, I think, how do you build a strategy that you can maintain consistently? This is not a fight which is going to end tomorrow. It doesn't matter that after dark, the Pakistani state forces can't operate in Balochistan. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that the state is going away anywhere. It's going to come, remember, it's going to come down harder. I am absolutely ashamed for every single young man, woman, old man or woman in Balochistan who gets picked up. I cry tears, I mean, I weep for them. But the reality is that this is going to get worse. So the thinking that you need to do is, what is a consistent approach? You have to be more strategic in how you deal with domestic players and international players. You have to find gaps in the narrative created by the state about you. Maybe you have to reach out to people that you don't even feel kindly towards. But this is a dialogue that has to happen. Remember one thing, and I'm sorry to say, Balochistan of today is not Bangladesh of 1971. If you think you're Bangladesh, I think you need to reassess. 70, 71, 99% of population was Bengali in East Pakistan. And in a non-nuclear environment, India did provide a major push. That environment is not there. So you have to be much more imaginative with your strategic thinking and see where we go, because you have a right to breathe freely. Every person living in the territory of Pakistan needs to breathe freely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayesha. Just a minor correction. Brahui is a language of Baloch they speak. And as you mentioned, the misery will continue, and so the struggle. Obviously, the strategies the Baloch needs to work on, the relation we need to work on, among others, within that region and internationally, and that is something you just mentioned. You are from the Saraiki Wased. I would say we have someone to represent them. That is an opening for that dialogue. Going forward, we were expecting a guest, someone who has a history working on the human rights, but due to the circumstances and other priorities, they are not here physically. But we have a solidarity video from them, so I'm just going to give you the brief bio. Mr. Reed Brody, he is a commissioner for the United States region at the International Commission of Jurists. He is the counsel for the victims of the former dictator of Chad, Hissène Habré, sorry for my pronunciation, who was convicted of crimes against humanity in a special court in Senegal. He has also served as a deputy chief of the United Nations Secretary General's investigative team in the Democratic Republic of Congo, director of Human Rights Division of the United Nations Observer Mission in El Salvador, advisor to the government of Haiti for the prosecution of serious crimes. Mr. Brody is on the advisory board of the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights. His work has been featured in 5 films, including The Dictator Hunter. So I would like to ask Niaz Baloch to play the recording, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to address your conference. I'm sorry I can't be with you, but I wanted to express my solidarity and my concern about human rights abuses in Balochistan. As reported by my colleagues at Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, Pakistan's law enforcement agencies continue to detain without charge, suppress peaceful demonstrations, carry out extrajudicial killings and disappearances. The recent crackdown on the Baloch National Gathering in July is a glaring example of this repression. Hundreds of protesters were detained. Excessive force was reportedly used to block the march to Gwadar. An internet shutdown was imposed, silencing voices and obstructing access to information. Brute force will not resolve the Balochistan crisis, which is rooted in decades of political marginalization, economic deprivation, and human rights abuses. Yet Pakistan's government continues to prioritize militarized crackdowns over political engagement, ignoring calls for justice and representation. Without addressing the core grievances of the Baloch people and opening genuine dialogue, the conflict will just persist. And the current approach risks repeating past failures with greater consequences. The right to protest is a fundamental cornerstone of any democratic society. Yet in Balochistan, enforced disappearances have been the modus operandi, and we've had reports of over 7,000 people disappeared since 2004. The people of Balochistan demand dignity, freedom, and the right to live without fear. So I send you my solidarity and I wish you well.
That was Mr. Reed Brody expressing his solidarity and gave a brief understanding of the situation and how that can be resolved, the issue of Balochistan, or the conflict as we should call it. Now, Dr. Ayesha also mentioned information blackout from Balochistan, as Balochistan is famously known as information black hole. There have been very few international journalists, there have been very few authors who had this courage, who had faced many challenges, but then still dare to go in Balochistan, bring out these stories. Today we have one of them in our panels. I'm just going to go through the bio and then the claps afterwards. So we have Mr. Willem Marx, learning the name. It's not William, it's Willem. Willem Marx, he is a London-based author and journalist with more than 2 decades of experience. He has reported in dozens of countries around the world. His broadcasting has appeared on outlets including PBS, NBC, ABC, CBS, and NPR, while his writing has been published in the Financial Times, Bloomberg, Business Week, and the Wall Street Journal, as well as Wired, Billboard, Scientific American, and Harper's, among others. He is the author of Balochistan at a Crossroads, a book that focuses on insurgency in Balochistan, and I would like to call upon Mr. Willem Marx. Please come and share your experience about Balochistan.
Thank you, Hakeem, and thank you for having me here as a guest. I'm a journalist. I'm not going to give you strategic advice. I'm not going to offer political analysis. What I can talk about is my first-hand experience of trying to commit this crime known as journalism in Balochistan, and the challenges entailed in that, and some of my own experiences. What I'd like to do, and we haven't done much of this yet though, is also encourage any of you, if you have a question, to ask it, because I'd love to answer questions about reporting there as well. But just very briefly, a bit of background about how I ended up in Balochistan. As a very young child, I lived in Karachi. My father was working there for a business. And leaving university, I learned how to film using a video camera. Doing a master's degree, living in the United States. And I went for a job interview with a very famous American TV news anchor called Dan Rather, and sat in his office being asked questions about the kinds of stories I'd like to do. And this is back in 2007. He has a very deep Texan accent. And he said, "Well, young man, what would you like to do?" And I said, "I'd really like to go to this place I've been reading about called Balochistan." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, there's a group of people there who believe they have the right to greater autonomy or independence, and at a time when there was a huge focus in the American news media about Afghanistan and Pakistan, particularly in light of the amount of US troops in Afghanistan, the amount of US military aid directed towards Pakistan, I said it would be very interesting to hear from these people, the Baloch, about what it meant to be fighting an insurgency against a military that was being significantly funded by the United States. These were people who did not necessarily have cultural values that were very different to those of democratic-seeking United States back in the 18th century. And I thought it was really interesting to try and see what life was like for people there, what was driving this insurgency. And to my delight, this man, Dan Rather, and his executive producer said, "That sounds really interesting. Start on Monday." And I spent a month trying to reach out to activists at a time when there wasn't really social media. There were a few web forums where people talked about Balochistan. And through the odd email, the odd contact, eventually I figured out that it would probably be possible for me to get into Balochistan. I'd need to get a journalism visa in Pakistan, which itself is an uphill challenge. And then more complex than that, I'd need to get a no objection certificate, which is the way that the Pakistani government tends to control access for journalists visiting the country. I told them I wanted to go to Balochistan to report on date farming. And in places like Turbat, some of you may know from the Macdonald coast, that's been economically over history, a very big part of the job prospects for young people. And I thought that was a way to persuade the officials inside the Pakistani government that I was not going to cause them any problems and had a positive story to tell. And to my great luck, they decided that was good enough for them. So I landed in Karachi and then spent 5 weeks traveling across Balochistan on my first trip with some very brave people helping me, particularly my young translator and a driver for whom I'm eternally grateful for their willingness to help me do this. And I came back with 2 films for Dan Rather's show. One was about the enforced disappearances, the role of the military in physically occupying Balochistan, and then the BLA insurgent group. I did another film about a Iranian-based organization that at the time was known as Jundullah, was led by a man called Abdul Malik Rigi, who, again, was relevant to an American audience because for a couple of years at that point there had been rumors that he was being funded by the Central Intelligence Agency to try and undermine the Iranian government. He'd never before given an interview on camera, and so getting that to happen was complicated but worthwhile because it gave American viewers an insight into what people in that part of Balochistan felt about the Iranian government. I left after 5 weeks. I had all sorts of difficulties with police, with the Frontier Corps, with the FIA, with the ISI, with the MI, the various alphabet soups that exist in Pakistan that keep people safe. And having left the country with all of my footage intact provoked quite a degree of consternation amongst some of the Pakistani officials who'd given me the visa in the first place, as you might imagine. I went back to Balochistan a couple years later and again went to visit some of the insurgent groups in the mountains, talked to more officials in Quetta at a time when there was a huge concern about the presence of the Afghan Taliban in Quetta. And that was essentially it. I was chased out of the country and thought I'm never going to be able to go back to Balochistan. And in fact, since 2010, I've not been able to thus far. I was then living in Afghanistan, working for CBS News, one of the American TV news networks, as their correspondent in Kabul, and a French photographer that I'd met one day, very coincidentally in Quetta, happened to be in Kabul, and we had lunch. And we talked about Balochistan because we thought we're one of a very small handful of journalists from overseas who've been able to travel through there. Unlike me, with my blonde hair, 6'2", this French journalist was much more effectively able to pass as someone who might be of South Asian origin. And so he had been able to travel a lot more discreetly than me, but I put him in touch with some of my contacts when we met, and he'd gone up to the same BLA camp I'd visited a few weeks earlier. We're having lunch in Afghanistan, and he was asking me, what did you end up doing with all of your reporting? And I said, well, I did a few films for American television. How about you with all of your wonderful photographs? And he said, I did an exhibition in France, and some of them appeared in a French magazine, but I took hundreds over the course of several weeks, and I've not been able to use them. And so we decided at lunch that day in Kabul that we would try and pitch a book idea to a publisher about Balochistan. There hadn't been a modern book written about Balochistan for about 20 years, and we figured there might be interest, particularly in South Asia, in what was happening in this province where there's so few journalists able to operate independently. And so that's how we kind of ended up working on this book, Balochistan at the Crossroads. It's a place, I'm impartial, but it's a place that I think of very fondly, very frequently. The people, the culture, the food, the landscapes were really important to me starting out as a very young journalist at the time. I'm not so young anymore, but I first got there when I was 23 years old. And ever since then, I've tried in my reporting to represent people who are marginalized to some extent, have less of an international voice in international media. And I put a lot of that down to my experience with the young Baloch people I met during that first visit. So with all that as context, I'd love to answer any questions you might have about journalism there. feel free to chuck up your hand. If you don't, I'll keep talking.
I'll go with one actually. So if someone else then has anything. You have seen Balochistan last, you were there, it was 2010. And when you were visiting Balochistan, and as you mentioned in your book, you've met with the families who are protesting for their loved ones. I think you mentioned the family of Waram Saleh. You have met Karima Baloch that time. She was leading Baloch student organization. And again, a victim, her family member were also picked up. From that time up to now, when you see Balochistan or when you hear about Balochistan, what you see changed, or is there any change journalistically?
Well, journalistically, I think it's probably even harder than when I first went there to travel into Balochistan. I suspect that they're not going to let many journalists do any reporting on date farming anytime soon. And the ability to get both a journalistic visa and then an NOC for international journalists that would allow you to travel even to Quetta, let alone the rest of the province, very, very, very challenging. In terms of the disappeared families, the reporting I did there about some of those people who were missing brothers or fathers, in one case I think grandfathers, was some of the most powerful human storytelling in our films, and it helped, we thought, viewers understand why other people might take a non-peaceful approach to protesting the behavior of these Pakistani military agencies primarily. And it's striking to me as someone who's traveled very extensively since then and visited lots of countries where extrajudicial killings, extrajudicial arrests have been commonplace, just how long this has gone on in Balochistan, and with such a degree of impunity that there have not been international panels empowered to investigate this or take action. The leverage that international actors have in Pakistan has not seemingly led to a reduction in state-sponsored violence against civilians. And so for me, every time I see videos or photographs from outside the Karachi Press Club or outside the Quetta Press Club with women, young and old, holding up photographs of their missing husbands, brothers, sons, IDs, I'm slightly surprised that there hasn't been more international action to try and prevent that becoming just a very ingrained part of the fabric of everyday life, if that makes sense.
Yes, Dr. Sana, please.
Two questions. Firstly, I'm sure you met the fronting board and the MI and the ISI while you were there.
Not for tea. I should hasten to add, it wasn't to sit down for tea. Often I was at a checkpoint and they were,
Right.
yes.
Which agency did,
The MI seemed to be the one that were, if not the harshest, certainly the most persistent. And there's an American phrase based on a TV show, the Keystone Cops. They're kind of slightly ridiculous figures. It's kind of that 1970s Peter Sellers style, the eyepieces in the newspaper, trying to very indiscreetly follow you around. And in cities like Quetta in particular, it was just so horrifically obvious that we were being followed all the time. There'd be vehicles outside where we were staying. People we had met with the day before would be visited after we'd met with them. But out in the more rural areas, and that's where I tried to spend as much time as possible, so long as you didn't stay in guest houses and hotels where you had to register and therefore your details would be passed on to the nearest military intelligence commander and they would turn up in the middle of the night and say, "Who are you?" It was okay. And so one of the challenges, I think, for international journalists operating there is to do so with the help of local people that will allow you to travel without as much hindrance. But it was certainly the MI that seemed to be the most...
Did you also get a sense of the attitude towards local
Well, in the sense that the way that they would treat the gentleman that was driving me around, the person that was helping me translate interviews, yeah, they were not particularly sympathetic to them. But in terms of kind of out on the street, their behaviour, now you see that more with the Frontier Corps and the way that they treat people in the more rural communities. But, you know, that's not to say that law enforcement attitudes there are consistent. You know, we met policemen who were perfectly friendly and willing to help. And there were times when they would, and this is often the case in many slightly authoritarian environments, government officials will say, well, we're going to send security with you for your own safety. And there are times when you might welcome that. Up in northwest Chad a couple of years ago on the Nigerian border, in an area where Boko Haram operates very frequently, I'm not disappointed to have soldiers with me as we're going to travel up to a certain region, because I don't know the area well. And there were times when ordinary police and FC would insist on accompanying you to do some filming on a rocky outcrop in the middle of nowhere. And you can't necessarily argue with that in the same way as them trying to stop you conducting interviews. So it was really quite varied in terms of my experience with the agencies. But once you're back in Islamabad in particular, you know, they will place you under a form of house arrest in your hotel and make life very difficult for you. In the airports, as is often the case in many countries, are places where huge amounts of pressure is brought to bear on you when you're carrying things like camera equipment. Does that help? Yeah.
But they didn't look at the footage.
Oh, they repeatedly would try to. And there's not a lot they can do if we don't have batteries that are charged, because they're not competent enough to have their own systems in place. So you have mechanisms to make sure that they can't necessarily review footage if they ask to. And as a British citizen, and I'm happy to see a British lawmaker on the screen here, you are afforded some degree of protection that Pakistani journalists certainly aren't. I'll leave it there, I think. If you have other questions, I'm around, so please come and find me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willem. And I know I do apologize. I think there are many questions which were coming your ways, but we just have to continue with this. And as Willem said, he is around. If someone has a question, they can ask. The experience, the journey, which I believe Willem shared, is something that tells you what is Balochistan. And if you go through, obviously, his work on Balochistan, you'll have a better understanding on it. Going forward, as we can see that the Right Honorable John Macdonald has joined us. Just a brief introduction. So the Right Honorable John Macdonald is the Labour MP for Hayes and Arlington and has been an MP continually since 1st of May 1997. John Macdonald is a British politician who served as Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer from 2015 to 2020. In the past few years, John Macdonald has supported the Baloch cause and took the issue of the Baloch nation in the British Parliament. Can I please get a round of applause for Mr. John Macdonald? Just a second, sorry.
Maybe he's mute from the other side.
No, he is talking. Yeah, just not. Yeah. You can hear him on the
Let's now move to the next.
Yeah, we can try it now.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can continue, John.
Okay, thanks. Let's try and overcome the technological problems. If I was there, I must probably be shouting. Thanks for the introduction. My reason for involvement in the political cause is because of the hard work that's been put in by a considerable number of people in the United Kingdom who are part of the community who have approached me and other MPs, first of all to brief us on the situation, the history and the current situation. And so I just want to pay tribute to them and to the hard work that they've put in. There is, at the moment, a group of MPs that we can rely upon to work together to ensure that the cause of Balochistan is, I think, mobilised within Parliament itself, within the UK Parliament. What we've tried to do is monitor the situation, receive as much information through briefings as possible, circulate that information across Parliament, for all political parties, but also to ensure that government ministers are aware of the situation and to proceed to prove their support for the intervention. At the moment, just to update you, I think there's fairly wide range of shocking and horror about what's happening at the moment with regard to the use of human rights, continuous disappearances, and the loss of life. I think people are beginning to wake up here to the brutality of the Pakistani authorities' role, and as a result of that, we're hoping that we can mobilise the UK government to be more effective in its intervention. Obviously, we're particularly concerned at the moment about our own colleagues, and we're worried for their safety and for their security. There are a number of us who are hoping again, without reservation, the rights abuse that has taken place, and the perpetration of what can only be described as crimes against humanity. And that's the position that we come on with. Our view also is that the perpetrators of the human rights abuses should not be allowed to act with impunity, and they should be held to account. And in due course, that means held to judicial account. Let me just run through a few of the actions that we're taking at the moment. We're seeking a meeting as a group of MPs, the United Kingdom Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, to discuss with the UK government and put more pressure on them, to be honest, to take more of an interventionist role with regards to the behaviour of the Pakistani authorities. What we want is a clear condemnation by the UK government of what's taking place at the moment in terms of human rights abuse. We want them to be raising these issues directly with the Pakistani government, and we want them to explore every other potential international forum that the UK government can use to raise these issues. We feel because of, as you know, of course, the history of the British involvement UK government has a very specific responsibility to act on these issues. We're hoping that we can get a meeting with the Foreign Secretary or at least a member of his ministerial team over the next 10 days. We're hoping that will result in not just a briefing, but some agreement for action by the UK government. To reinforce that, we've already had what we call early day motions, which is like a petition filed by MPs into Parliament, and just table another, exposing the abuse of human rights and in particular the risk to documentation. But we're also seeking another debate in the House of Commons about the whole issue. And in the debate, that gives us the opportunity of having a UK government minister come to Parliament to explain the role the UK government will be playing. I'm extremely proud of the work that members of the community have done here, the British community here, and some of them are with you today, in terms of mobilising the community into lobbying Parliament itself. We've organised a rally and a lobby of Parliament in the next few months, and again that's to ensure that we can bring a wider range of MPs as possible, cross-party MPs, and have them and recruit them working with us to raise these issues in Parliament itself. One of the questions that's been raised as well is if a group of MPs from the UK Parliament can undertake a fact-finding mission in the area to explore the abuse of human rights taking place. I think the Pakistani authorities will do everything that they can to resist that, but I actually do think it's worth seeking that opportunity. Again, it's trying to make sure that we maintain the momentum of our campaigning and lobbying on this issue. The final point for me is I want to reassure you that we will keep the pressure on the UK government, but also obviously that means using the pressure of the UK government in terms of pressurising Pakistani authorities. The UK government has a role to play because of the aid it provides to Pakistan, but also because of its trading relationship. And as a result of that, we feel the UK government can be doing more to exert pressure, certainly in terms of preventing the human rights abuses, but also maybe in the medium term as well, to try and secure the principles of acceptance of the freedom of the British people to determine their own future. The basic principle of self-determination that we accept as a basic human right across the globe. So that's our strategy, and they're the actions we're taking at the moment. But again, I want to make sure you're aware of the activities that are taking place within our own community, resting upon the shoulders of some people who are working incredibly hard, and I want to thank them for all that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Honorable John Macdonald. Just as we heard about an action plan, what can be done, what are the Honorable MP and the community, the Baloch community in UK can do and are already doing. I'm just going to touch base some of the information which he mentioned, meeting the Minister David Lammy, putting pressure on the United Kingdom government to condemn the Pakistani atrocities, and as a fact-finding mission to be sent to Balochistan to just look onto the violations that are taking place in Balochistan the human rights abuses, and John also mentioned about the self-determination of Balochistan, the right to choose how the Baloch people want to live. Thank you very much for your time. Going forward, we are going to invite our next speaker. Okay, yeah. Sorry, just before we continue. So I understand that Mr. Macdonald might have other commitments and priorities. So if you want to leave it there, that's fine. And if you want to stay, we are more than happy to have you in the conference. All right. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, we have another distinguished guest. I'm just going to go through her biography because there's a lot of information that will give you an understanding of her work. We had a chat yesterday about her work and everything. So the next we have is Miss Eleonora Mongali. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Now, Eleonora is a human rights advocate. She is the vice president of Italian Federation for Human Rights. Her work primarily focuses on defending victims of political persecution worldwide. Her work, which ranges from advocacy to research, is centered on improving justice and is strengthening international tools for the protection of freedoms and human rights. She has conducted fact-finding missions in several countries in Africa, Africa and Eastern Europe at FIDU, which is the International Federation for Human Rights. She coordinates human rights campaigns and projects and carries out, together with international partners, monitoring, reporting activities with a focus on Eastern Europe, Central Asia, Turkey, China, and Iran. Can I please get a round of applause for Eleonora Mongali?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be speaking alongside such prominent activists, experts, and journalists who are covering gross violations of human rights that deserve more international attention. Let me begin by briefly introducing the organization I represent and what we are observing as human rights defenders in order to identify the pathway to justice. The Italian Federation for Human Rights, FIDU, is based in Italy but operates globally with a cooperative and transnational approach. Our mission focuses on safeguarding human rights, upholding the rule of law, and advocating for global justice. And we pursue this mission through several strategies, including advocacy campaigns, fact-finding missions, monitoring and reporting activities, and we rely on our extensive international network, which includes NGOs, journalists, experts, lawyers, and academics. Since the fight for justice is central to our work, we have joined global efforts to support the reform of international institutions designed to protect human rights, secure justice, and peace. Unfortunately, we have to say that these institutions are failing in their primary goal today. The United Nations, for instance, lacks the enforcement powers necessary to ensure compliance with its resolutions. This failure to protect human rights is evident across all the UN human rights bodies and beyond. At the same time, we are witnessing an alarming rise in narratives promoted by authoritarian countries led by China's governments to seek to undermine the universal language of human rights. And this is an important point I want to I want to stress because, for instance, at the United Nations, Chinese delegates are attempting to manipulate procedures not only to reject evidence of abuses committed by the Chinese government, but also to promote a broader agenda of protecting the allied countries from scrutiny. And in light of this worrying trend where human rights and international law risk becoming mere empty words, it is our responsibility, especially as people living in democratic countries, to remind the importance of protecting the international human rights system. Today's world is facing several pressing challenges, from geopolitical fragmentation, the rise of authoritarianism, the growing threat of disinformation, and the expansion of transnational repression. Our institutions are not prepared to handle these issues, and no one is truly safe as the international order undergoes a significant transition. Over the last 3 years, with the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Europe has seen how any dependence on states that don't respect basic human rights can undermine the rule of law, democracy, and global stability. We are all testimonies that strong ties with this kind of countries, governments always come at a high price for us, leading to human rights abuses, human suffering, and the suppression of freedom that extend well beyond national borders. Authoritarian regimes often use state-sponsored repression to silence dissidents, violating basic human rights. An international community must never remain silent in front of such abuses because they are never isolated incidents, but global issues that require an unified response. And that's the case with Baloch repression. I don't want to repeat what has already been mentioned from the other speakers, but the ongoing human rights violations inflicted in Balochistan by Pakistani forces over the past 2 decades have led to thousands of people, including activists, journalists, students, and civilians being abducted, tortured, and killed. These systematic human rights abuses committed against the Baloch people have been widely documented, included by the United Nations in the report of the Working Group of Enforced Disappearances. In that report, we read that in many cases of missing persons, the dead bodies of victims and enforced disappearance are found in various parts of Balochistan, showing clear signs of tortures. The systematic kidnapping and enforced disappearances, along with the abuse of anti-terrorism law used by Pakistani forces to arrest innocent people, are part of a broader strategy to silence voices. And there are thousands of cases where individuals have been arrested and disappeared, yet not a single prosecution has taken place before any court or judicial body. Among the many victims, I want to highlight the case of Marang Baloch, a prominent human rights activist who bravely spoke out for the rights of the Baloch people, and for that, she herself became a target, facing persecution, intimidation, and arrest. And now it's up to us to be the voices of those who have been silenced, for Marang and for all the other victims, especially since there is evidence of deliberate, deliberate attempt to hidden the crimes committed by state forces. The falsification of data with the state-sponsored propaganda creates the perfect condition for impunity. And in this context, it's crucial to raise awareness and promote accurate information to counter the manipulation of facts that enables the repression to continue unpunished. Disinformation is a tool of oppression, and it's often supported externally, including by international actors such as China, who plays a significant role in the region. So raising awareness is not only our duty, but it is a powerful act of resistance against those who seek to rewrite the reality. The international community must not remain silent, and we must act with determination to ensure that the responsible of these terrible abuses are held accountable and that the rule of law is upheld. Our response must be comprehensive, rooted in justice, and focused on protecting those at risk. So the victims are, the focus of our work, and should be the focus also by democratic governments. So I would suggest, when it comes to action, a dual approach. First, at international level, through stronger cooperation between states and institutions, including the UN and other relevant bodies, to demand monitoring, independent investigations, and the firm condemnation of crimes and human rights violations in Balochistan. We must work to make international mechanisms more effective, because now we don't have mechanisms, international mechanisms that are really effective and can be activated when we are facing these gross violations of human rights. At the same time, we should explore new tools. This includes the adoption of both economic and targeted sanctions against those responsible for gross human rights violations. Second, at the national level, we can also work. We need to raise awareness from member states, from members of the parliament, to media, to give support and visibility to human rights organizations exposing such abuses and enhance their capacity to respond. So we need to support all those civil society organizations, experts, to do their work. The pathway to justice is long, and it faces many political challenges, but giving up is not an option. If we truly want to preserve freedom, we must restore dignity to human rights, to international law, and above all, to human beings. Only by holding perpetrators accountable and securing justice for the victims, we can hope to prevent future violations and abuses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleonora. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yeah? As we have heard from Eleonora and many others about how the international community and the laws and the civilized world can, should, held Pakistan accountable, what we can do as the representative of the oppressed nation, how to build those cases. So going forward, we have been trying, as we had the in our speaker list, Manzoor Pashtun. Manzoor Pashtun, we all know him. He is the leader of Pashtun Tahfuz movement, but unfortunately, we have not been able to connect him since the morning. It could be an internet issue. I'm not saying anything. I'm not raising fingers, but it's Pakistan. They can do anything. They might be just disrupting it for Manzoor to not be here. But the more they try to suppress us, the more we will rise. So we have Mr. Fazlur Rahman Afridi, who is the representative of the PTM in obviously on the global stage in Europe. I would like to call him on the stage to give us a perspective of the PTM, and it can carry, I would say, a message from our Pashtun brethren to the Baloch. Mr. Fazlur Rahman Afridi, please.
Thank you very much, BNL. Thank you very much, Dr. Naseem Baloch. On behalf of the leader of PTM, Manzoor Ahmed Pashtun. I would like to express our solidarity with our Baloch brothers. PTM has already issued a communique, press communication, supporting the Baloch Yel-Jehdi committee, their protest, and we have condemned unequivocally the brutal crackdown on the Baloch Yel-Jehdi committee and the murder of our Baloch brothers by police. Unfortunately, as you know, that Manzoor Ahmed Pashtun, after the holding of the Grand Jirga on 11th September 2024, he is in the hiding, and PTM has been banned by the government of Pakistan, and we have information that not only the government of Pakistan, but there are the proxies of the Pakistani regime. There are about 4, suicide bombers are waiting for him to come out to attack him. And already there have been 2 foiled suicide attacks on him. Unfortunately, he get out unharmed. But the most important thing is that we are really heartened that the Baloch, struggle and movement is, going ahead. It's one step, or you can say more steps ahead of us. But Pashtuns are also behind you. For quite a long time, the Pashtuns have been the accomplice with the Punjabi establishment in suppressing other nations like Balochs and Sindhis. But for the last 20 years, there's a big change as during the war on terror and after the Pakistani military, the Pakistani establishment started attacking Pashtuns also. And you would have been astonished to know that during that war on terror, in which they were supposed to kill the terrorists, actually they attacked the innocent civilians. More than 80,000, this is the statement of the government of Pakistan, 80,000 people were killed. Almost all of them are Pashtuns. More than 32,000 are missing, and we don't know about their whereabouts, whether they are alive or dead, just like our Baloch brothers. More than 300,000 houses were destroyed, 25,000 shops were destroyed, and the Pakistani government used heavy artillery, gunship helicopters, and F-16s against their own people. So those human rights violations, war crimes and crimes against humanity were committed against the Pashtun people. So we have the same, suffering the same oppression. We are suffering the same genocide of our nations. The most important thing is that we stand together. You are well ahead of us, not only on the ground. You are close to your independence, I'm sure, but we are not far away. So we stand against the Pakistani regime. We stand with our Baloch brothers. We stand particularly at this moment with the Baloch Yel-Jehdi movement. The best thing is, the good thing is that the international community is, is considering and, regarding the situation in Balochistan, which is very important, especially on 26th of March, 25th or 26th of March, the UN experts, independent experts, issued a communication regarding Balochistan. So we demand immediate and unconditional release of Mahang Baloch, Sami Baloch, and other activists of Balochistan movement committee, and we express our solidarity with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As mentioned by my colleague Fazlur Rahman Afridi, that we stand together. You're not behind us. You're not left behind. All the oppressed nations, all the oppressed people, this time will make sure that the state oppression will end once and for all, not only for the Baloch and every other oppressed nation under this brutal, violent state. It's not just a regime, it's not just a government, it's not just one dictator, it is the mindset, it is the mentality, it is the very basic idea of the Pakistani state that hates all the nationalities that live in that area, in that region. So I know it's been a very long day with no breaks, and I kindly ask everyone to sit there, not to leave the conference. I had to go once, I do apologize for that, but we are going to bring this conference to a conclusion. So the next speaker we have, that's the chairman of Baloch National Movement, Dr. Naseem Baloch. He joined the national movement during his student days. Due to his dynamic character, he was also forced to disappear by the Pakistani army. He played a crucial role in organizing BNM in the diaspora. As we can see, a very strong, committed diaspora. Dr. Naseem had played a crucial role in that. And before being elected as the chairman for the Baloch National Movement, he was the organizer of the diaspora committee of the party. With a huge round of applause, Dr. Naseem Baloch, please.
Thanks, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, scholars, human rights defenders, and dedicated members of the Baloch National Movement. Today, we gather not just as individuals, but as a united force against oppression. Your presence here is more than a formality. It is a stand against injustice, a voice for those silenced, a symbol of resistance. Today, as our friends mentioned, it is a significant day in modern Baloch history. 77 years ago, on this day, Pakistan forcibly took over Balochistan. This was not a peaceful integration. It was an act of aggression, a betrayal of a nation's sovereignty. Since that dark day in 1948, our people have faced brutal military campaigns, economic deprivation, and systematic genocide. Our land, rich in resources, has been looted, while our people are left in poverty. Our voices have been silenced, our leaders assassinated, and our youth disappeared without a trace. Balochistan today is bleeding. The notorious kill and dump policy has turned our home into a graveyard. Thousands of Baloch men, women, and children have been abducted by Pakistani forces Their lifeless bodies, marked with torture, are thrown into the wilderness as a warning to those who dare to demand freedom. Thousands remain missing, leaving behind families trapped in a cycle of pain and uncertainty. And now, Pakistani state has escalated its campaign of terror by targeting Baloch women. Historically, Baloch women have stood at the forefront of resistance. They have marched for justice, raised their voices against oppression, and fought for their missing loved ones. And now they are being punished. Dr. Maharang Baloch, a fearless activist, was abducted and later imprisoned under false charges. Sami Deen Baloch, who has spent his life searching for her missing father, was brutally beaten and arrested for peacefully protesting. These are not isolated incidents. This is a calculated strategy to break the backbone of our struggle. Our women, our mothers, our daughters, those who nurture life are now facing the worst form of state brutality. In Pakistan's torture cell, they are facing unimaginable horrors. These are not just human rights violations. These are crimes against humanity. Pakistan is in clear violation of international laws, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which guarantees the right to life and protection from torture. It violates the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which it has ratified, but shamelessly disregards it. It ignores the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, as it systematically targets female activists. And yet, despite these undeniable crimes, Pakistan continues to receive international support. I ask, how can Western democracies preach about human rights while aiding a state that is committing genocide in Balochistan? How can Pakistani generals with blood on their hands be welcomed on global platforms? Silence in the face of these atrocities is not neutrality, it is complicity. The world must act. The United Nations must send an independent fact-finding mission to investigate Pakistan's crimes in Balochistan. Human rights organizations must amplify their efforts to expose the gender-based violence against Baloch women. The international media must break its silence and reveal the truth. Democratic nations must reconsider their political and economic ties with Pakistan until it ends repression and allows the Baloch nation to determine their own future. But let me make this clear, no amount of violence, no level of repression will break the Baloch spirit. Despite the disappearances, despite the massacres, despite the suffering, despite the mass graves and collective punishment, we stand firm. The Baloch struggle for freedom is unshaken. We will not be silenced. We will not surrender. Let this gathering be more than just words. Let it be a commitment to raise awareness, to take action, and to stand with the oppressed. We owe it to the martyrs who sacrificed their lives, to the families searching for their loved ones, and to brave daughters of Balochistan who continue to resist tyranny. Balochistan will not be silenced. Balochistan will resist. Balochistan will be free. I thank you. And thank you all for
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Naseem, who gave his final remarks and concluded the event. There's nothing left for me to speak, but I have a very bad habit. I love to talk. So I'm just going to take 2 more minutes of your time. We are going to conclude this event, and there will be food served outside, and the guests will be. So we ask our guests if they can go to the canteen area, and there's a request to our members. Please be seated. Foreign Secretary Fahim Baloch want to speak to you for 5 to 10 minutes. Dasbandi ke 5 minutes में दबने दे. Fahim Baloch गोशमा का मुगाब जनते. The conference is over, ended officially here. Thank you very much. Thank you.